Before starting in InDesign, you need to make sure that all your images are gathered up into one place. InDesign doesn't actually save your full resolution images. It makes a thumbnail image, a sort of low resolution image that it connects and links into the real image, which is saved in a folder. And I will go through that as we progress throughout the tutorial, but first you just need to know that you need to make a new folder, give it a name, I'm just going to gather up all my images that I might use in my work into the one folder, so it's all together. And now I've done that, I can open up InDesign and choose Create New. I can choose from a range of preset sizes here. All the standard print sizes are in here, A4, A3 is in there somewhere, letters and so on. Standard web sizes, Instagram and so on are all in there. And the same for mobile phone standards. Or you can go to the presets to the right hand side and choose a custom layout and just make it in there. So you need to make sure that you have chosen the units of measurement that you're working in. Width and height, orientation, landscape or portrait. Give it a name. And there's a few things in here that aren't in programs like Photoshop. One is facing pages. So if you're designing a book, you need to tick facing pages. If you're designing a poster or a single sheet, you need to untick facing pages. We're going to make a booklet that's going to be more than one page, so we're going to tick on facing pages. We can add the number of pages we're going to start with, and that might change as we go along, but I'm going to start with maybe 6 pages. I want to start on page 1, and then we can choose the number of columns to assist with laying out the elements. I'm going to choose 2 columns just so that you can see what that does when we open up the page. The column gutter is the gap between the 2 columns, so I'm going to leave that set to 4.2. And then the margins are the top, bottom, left and right sides of the page. So we have to add a little bit to allow for printing margins and a little bit to allow for overlap. So again, all those things you will see when we open up InDesign. You'll be able to see how these things work. So I'm going to leave that as is and choose Create. So the document will open in the InDesign workspace. And I'll just go through that. So first, if you go to Window, down to Workspace, just choose Essentials Classic from the list there so that we're all looking at the same set of parameters, or got the same boxes and menus together. So Window, Workspace, Essentials Classic. That gives us the menu bar across the top with File, Edit, Layout and so on, Window. We've got an options bar underneath, which we will come back to in due course. We've got the workspace here with the rulers and measurements. Toolbar down on the left. And then on the right, we've got some menus, some extras, parameter boxes, some swatch options there. Yours might look slightly different, but it should be pretty much the same as this. In here, we've got pages, layers, link, stroke and colour, and we'll come back to each of those things as we're moving along. going to start with pages. So if I click on pages, I can just grab and expand that box down. And here are my pages laid out. At the top, I've got a master page layout, and we'll look at that in due course. Underneath, I've got the actual pages as they are. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is where you can see that I've got facing pages. You can open them out like a book or a magazine. So number 1 is going to be my front cover. 2 and 3 will be a double page spread. 4 and 5 is a double page spread, and 6 will be the back. On the document itself, you can see that my 2 columns are showing, and I've got margins top and bottom, left and right, and in the middle there is the gutter margin that we were talking about between the 2 columns. So it's looking quite straightforward for now. Okay, so one of the underpinning themes of InDesign is frames and shapes. So if we look down the toolbar, we have the selection tool and the direct selection tool. If you've used Illustrator, you will have come across those before. We'll skip a few. We have a text tool, pen tool. Again, if you've used Illustrator, you'll have seen that before. And the 2 that we're looking at are these 2 square shapes here. So the rectangle tool and the rectangle frame tool. And I'm just going to demonstrate the difference. So rectangle tool is a shape. If I click on it and come across, I can draw a rectangle. If I look up here in the properties, I can choose to fill the rectangle with colour, and I can choose to give the rectangle an outline. I can also change the width of the outline. I can choose to fill it with nothing, so no colour, none. And I can choose to have the outline as none as well, or instead of. If I deselect it and I want to come back and fill it again, I just choose the black arrow, the selection tool there. Come over and select it and choose something to fill it with. If I right click on the shape tool, there are others in there. So there's an ellipse tool. There's also a polygon tool. If I double click on the page, I can choose how many sides my polygon has and adjust the size. I can adjust the size of all these by just clicking on it using the selection tool and then resizing in the same way as we did with Photoshop. Okay, so I'm just going to delete those by clicking on them and pressing delete on the keyboard. I'm going to leave that one so you can see the difference. So the other option in there, if I turn that back to the rectangle shape, is the rectangle frame tool. So the shape is just called rectangle tool and the frame is called rectangle frame tool. And if I come over and draw a box there, you'll see that this has got a blue cross in it. And all the frame tools have that blue cross. There's the ellipse and the polygon. And that means it's a placeholder, it's not a shape. It's a container for your images that you might pull in. So images, text, graphics, they can all be pulled into here and fit in a container. If I bring up my folder of images, I can choose any of these and drag them over into the container. It will just fit to the shape. Okay, so at the moment the image has come in at the same size and resolution that it is, so it's much too big for my container, for my frame there. So I can make some changes. I can either leave it as it is if that's the size that I want within that frame, or I can change the size of the object to fit within the frame. So I can choose here, fill frame proportionally, has fitted the frame to the object. Fill frame proportionally has fitted the object to the frame as best as it can, because my frame is not quite the same shape as my object. Or I could choose to fit the content proportionally, which will bring in my entire picture at the right size, but I have this white space either side because, again, my frame is too big for my picture. My frame is too wide for my picture this time. I can fit the content to the frame, but that will stretch my image. If I step back, I can also fit the frame to the content, which will clip the frame nicely around my image there. There are lots of different ways of doing that. If this panel doesn't appear here for you, if your laptop screen is too small, sometimes that's the first thing to go. So you can find those in Object, Fitting, and there are some shortcuts that I'll give you as well. If it's not there at all, or it's greyed out in the Object panel, it's because you haven't got the frame selected. So if I just go back and select the frame there. So the object container is different to the object itself. If I want to look at the object itself, I can click on this circle that appears in the middle there, and that changes my outline of the object to orange. So from there you can see I have the frame and the object. And the object is too big for the frame at the moment. If I shrink my object in, I can put it back within the frame. I can drag it around now and put it wherever I want, but it will always only you will always only be able to see the bit that is within the frame. So you need to think of this as like a window with the object behind. So you can overlap frames, and you can resize them, and that will resize your object unless you want to refit your objects within. You can choose the order of overlap by selecting one of the objects, right-clicking on it, and choosing Arrange, and then you can bring it forward or send it back. So if I bring that onto the front, it layers on top. One of the good things about this way of working is that if I later decide that's not the image I want, I can delete it at a later date and find my new image and just drop it in, so I don't have to change anything other than the image itself. That's a really handy thing to be able to do. So what I'd like you to do is to start on your retail report. Just start with the front cover, put some images in. You can change them as you move along in your project and you have some different images to show. So I just want you to arrange your placeholder images. In the next session, we'll look at text. InDesign can be quite hard to get a grip on, so this week we will just do the images. Next week we will do text, and we'll build up from there. So with all your images in, I'm just going to use a shortcut on the keyboard, W, and that gives you a print preview. So that's what your front cover will look like without the column markings and all the InDesign information. So this is how it looks. You can also get that if you go to View. You've got a range of different ways to preview there. You can choose Preview from the screen mode, or we can go back to the normal. So W to print preview, W to take you back. When you've finished arranging your images on your front page, I want you to screenshot it. So Command-Shift-4 on a Mac will give you this crosshair, and I can screenshot it. That will load onto the desktop, and that gives me an image to upload to my Padlet. And we also need to save so that you have it for another time. So if we go to File, Save As, give it a name. Give it a name. Choose where you're going to save it to. And in the format, I'm going to choose 2019, InDesign CC 2019 for mine, because I will be working on this laptop for some time to come on this version. If you are working across different computers, you need to choose InDesign CS4 or later, IDML. If you are always working on the same computer and you have 2019 or 2020 on it, you can choose that. If you're working on different computers, different versions, choose InDesign CS4 or later, IDML. If you're working on your own computer, version 2019 or 2020, just choose the version there, so 2019 document. Tick for the Save Preview Images, and save. And if I close that, I'm just going to demonstrate what's happened to my images there. So I now have my retail report InDesign file here. Just going to drag that up. And here are my images. I'm going to make a new folder to put all of it in. So new folder, call that retail report design, just so I know what's in it and where to find it. I'm going to put everything in there, and that's how I'm going to keep it. So in here now I have my InDesign file and I have my tutorial images. It is really important that you keep these things together. You're going to need both. If you have no images, you have no file, and I will show you what happens if we have no images. Just drag that out. If I open it up, I get this message. The document contains 3 links to sources that are missing. You can find or relink the missing links using the links panel. So I'm just going to go and find that. So I've come back in, it's telling me that it can't find this image or this image. So all I've got there is a low resolution version. If I go to the print preview, it's not going to look any better. If I come over to this panel here and choose the links panel, it can tell me which images it can't find, and actually it's all 3 of them. If I double click on the question mark, it will take me to a Finder window or Explorer on Windows, and I can locate my File, locate my images. I only need to show it one and it should be able to find the other three. Okay, so it's far better to have everything in one folder. If you've lost those images, if you only have the InDesign file, then there's no way you can get those back. You've only got the low-res versions and that won't look very nice in print. Looks okay on the screen, but it won't look nearly as good when you zoom in and print.